For all the latest on the SaWGuy podcast, be sure to subscribe and don't forget that bell icon. Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I am the SaWGuy, and you're joining me for a very special episode that I like to call a year in review. You know, it's kind of funny. When I started SaWGuy podcast, I debuted it on December 31st, New Year's Eve of 2017. And I didn't think that it would go super quick. You know, 2018 came and went. Boom, bam, you know, right? And so I want to take time to kind of go over all, you know, the episodes and everything, kind of give you a quick details of everything, give you a little bit of behind the scenes, what actually happens, and little fun stuff like that, you know, because I've been asked a lot of Q&As like, hey, how'd you come up with this idea? Hey, how'd you do this? You know? So I figured, well, screw it, might as well do it, you know, after the end of year one, before I start year two, you know, I want to go ahead and give you guys this whole year in review. So let's get started, right?
Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
I ain't no fucking clown.
That is better.
Now clear your minds. He knows what scares you.
I'm just gonna bash your brains.
What the hell? The boogeyman is real, and you found him. What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
Hell. Everybody loves popcorn.
As I said, it's already been a year since I've done the SaWGuy podcast, and I'm still continuing it. And, you know, before I get started on anything, I want to make sure and say thank you to everybody that's all supported the SaWGuy podcast, you, the viewers, everybody that follows on my Twitter, on my Facebook, even on my random social media apps, you know, like Firework and everything. Thank you all, because I wouldn't be the SaWGuy without you guys. So first and foremost, thanks. Well, anyways, let's get started, right? So when I started this podcast, I had a very few ideas in mind of how I wanted to do it. But, you know, there was a lot of things going on in my life when I started this. And, you know, most of them not all good, you know. But I was using horror films as a way to, you know, kind of go through life, I guess, you know. Because for me, horror movies have always been my life. And, you know, it's just it's just a habit, you know. After a long day, you put on a horror movie, you know. You're hanging out with somebody, you put on a horror movie, right? I mean, that's how it's always been with me. I've been doing that since I was a kid. And I figured, okay, might as well do it as my own podcast show, right? So when I started this, I didn't think that, you know, I didn't have everything all planned and broken down. It just kind of all fell into place for me. It really did. You know, in some of the episodes that I started off with, I know a lot of viewers and a lot of friends and stuff like that tuned in there are like, it's a little different from my liking. And, you know, I get it. Because when I used to do a former podcast show, and that was just audio only. And, you know, you have to you have to really have the passion for it, I guess, you know. Because with podcasts, without video or anything like that, I guess it does take a toll on you, but it's more or less like it has to be something that's, you know, appealing, something that you have the passion for, like I said. Otherwise, you know, it just kind of goes and goes and goes and goes, you know. That's why when I decided to do, you know, a YouTube channel, I was like, oh, okay, I got to make it interesting. I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And, you know, one of the main big questions that I always get is, how come I make two versions of every episode, you know? I have an audio version and I have a video version, right? Well, that came about because, you know, I still love doing the podcasting thing. You know, I call this show the SaWGuy Podcast. And, you know, basically the way, my reason behind doing the audio only is so that way, you know, where I live, you can't, you know, mess with your phone or anything like that in the car. At least if you put it on YouTube and put it on the audio only, like, you're not going to miss anything. You'll hear all the points, you know. And that was my reasoning behind it. And, you know, for when you get home or whatever, you can actually watch the full video. Originally, I wanted to do a sign language one, but it's kind of difficult to do when you wear a mask all the time, you know, because it's all based on facial features. I'm actually fluent in sign language. Long story short, I have hearing issues on both sides of my ears, and it's something I've dealt with since I was a kid, and I had to learn sign language, and I've carried it on, you know, and I love to do sign language. I love to, you know, speak it or sign it, I guess you could say. And I wanted to do something tied into it, but when I decided that I wanted to do a mask and kind of, you know, I guess you could say be more private that idea just kind of went away. So I'm like, but eventually I plan later on, for the future of year 2, maybe I'll see if I could do some, sign language videos. We'll see, because I had that in the pipeline. And this episode also too, I'll give you all, the insight and the future of what I'm going to plan to do for year 2. I know normally I don't post everything all the way up, and there's reasons behind that, and I'll get to those shortly. But what I like to do and come up with ideas is just I don't play it off of anything really. I know the way I look at it, there's so many different various channels, so many different outlets to tune into a horror podcast that I have to do something to be a little different. And for me, that's when I decided, okay, well, I'll do the 2 versions, right? And I'll talk about, different subjects to kind of break it down in dialogue, right? So my first few episodes, I have it on YouTube right now to kind of help me because I didn't realize I had already 41, close to 42 episodes, and then I have, some 2-parters, I have some special edition episodes or special episodes, and I'm just like, whoa, okay, I can't break every one of these down. But I'll kind of, go through and tell you little bits of things that I've, where the ideas came from and stuff like that, My first episode, I've always wanted to do, talk about the supernatural films. It was always something that I wanted to do. Even when I was in, doing my own previous project, the idea that I brought up many, many times, I never got a chance to do it. So I automatically told myself the first episode I'm going to do it on supernatural films. And it kind of didn't work out the way that I wanted it to because as I talked about it, I broke down various different films. I gave my input and stuff like that. And it's kind of cool, because that's how usually it is the difference between a podcast and a YouTube show. Is that, with a podcast, you break down things and you give your own opinion. Versus, on a YouTube channel, you do the same, but you have visual around you. You know what I'm saying? But it didn't work out the way that I wanted. So I figured, okay, well, I'm going to throw out some different things out there. Kind of make it, more appealing, I guess you could say. So some of the things that I decided after that episode is, well, I'm going to do Stephen King horror films. Because I'm a huge Stephen King fan. And I know most of you guys are probably Stephen King horror fans too, I love everything that he's done with his books. Most of the movies, yes. There's very few of them that I'm just like, I could do without it, More or less, I think, to me, from my opinion, it's more of his recent stuff that isn't remakes, But I still like, Stephen King. So that was behind the reason on that one, was that I tie in a little bit of his horror films, kind of break down the difference between the movies and the books and stuff like that. And what I tried to do originally, I'm going to go up here. Oh, man. I've got so many that I'm scrolling through right now. So with, what I was trying to plan to do with Stephen King was just try to break it down a little bit. Like, yeah, there is differences between the book and the movie. And if you really have the passion of horror films, read the book. Because the book was, 9 times out of 10, the book is usually more intense. And it just kind of blew me away, like classic example, like It. The one scene that wasn't in there, it just still blows my mind. Like, what the fuck, Or when you think of Pet Sematary, when Wendigo wasn't in there, the demon. They talked about it in the book, and it's mentioned, but in the movie, they don't do much of it. Supposedly this remake, they're going to bring that out, but we'll wait to see. That the verdict is still out on that, right? But later on, I decided that I was going to do other episodes that were kind of intriguing to myself that I grew up with, If you talk to anybody from my generation, and you bring up something like Goosebumps, oh, man. I get goosebumps hearing about Goosebumps, because growing up in the 90s and late 80s, you had R.L. Stine, he was a good author, and he wrote a lot of books, and then he hit a home run with Goosebumps. He made all these books, and it had great cover art, It was just the cover art to me as a kid that just intrigued me, and I got hooked on the books. And I wanted to talk about that. That was my main reason behind that episode. And, it's... For me, I personally, that's one of my other favorites that I really like because of, I was still kind of starting out. And I'm going to be honest, from my first episode to now, there's a clear, huge 180 difference because of the fact of when I started, I didn't know too much about video editing software and stuff like that. I know how to do audio. I can do audio all the time, But when it comes to video, it's a completely different ballgame to me. So that's why you see it was kind of different to how it is now. And, one of the things that I wanted to do with this show, too, is kind of give it that grindhouse feel. You know, that's why I have I shouldn't say so many filters. I have one filter on, and it looks kind of like worn out film, and I like that. That's always just been kind of like something that I always wanted to imply, you know, or put on into anything that I would do, you know, give it that edgy, gritty look, you know, which is another reason why I decided to go with the mask. It's, you know, for one, I could be a little bit more private, and then at the same time, it can still have that nice, you know, kind of grindhouse look, you know. But later on in some of my episodes, you know, I try to keep in with the genres. I really did. I try to do like clown horror and slasher horror, and you know, it wasn't too good. At least to my knowledge, it wasn't too good. You know, I try to, you know, talk about all these films as a whole, and then pick a film out to later on do an episode. And that just, you know, in my head, I thought that would work out perfect. But you know, it's just you have to do something that's, you know, entertaining at the same time. You know, and some of the films, you know, they're not everyone's cup of tea, I guess you could say. You know. Some of the films, you know, I try to do a little bit of mainstream, but something that's not too mainstream, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? But I know I had many ideas, you know, and some of you guys have seen my notebook. I've showed it on a couple of episodes. Like, hey, I'm looking at all these notes. It's the truth. I take everything down, jot everything down. You know. So later on in some of my episodes, what I decided to do, I said, okay, well, I'm gonna start talking about franchises. So I started with the Jason franchise. And I know I took like 2 weeks off on that one because, you know, behind the scenes, you know, there were some health issues and I wasn't feeling really too good, not too hot. And I wanted to debut a new mask, and, you know, that I kind of felt like I rushed it, you know, because doing a 2-part episode, doing an hour-long episode, it didn't work out, you know. So that's why I was like, okay, well, you know, I'll try it again later on. Some of my other favorite moments that I liked, you know, from when I first started, honestly, was just the idea of trying to build up different things, you know, trying to hype it up, you know, because as I said when I first started, this is all a one-man show, and it still is a one-man show. I do all the recording, the editing, the note-taking, all the promotions, everything, you know, everything's all done in-house by me, yours truly, you know. And I love doing the aspect of that because it makes me feel more in depth of things, you know. And you know, when I do an episode, I always make sure that I research the hell out of it. And everybody says, you go to IMDb for your stuff, and, you know, you do this, or you go to Wikipedia. Not always. I mean, honestly, most of the time I look up interviews of, you know, the actors, or I look up interviews of the directors, the writers, everybody who had their hands involved in kind of a horror film, you know. And what I like to do, I like to, you know, see their perspective of things. And then I watch the film myself, and then I pay attention, because I always watch, you know, every episode I do, I always watch the film at least, you know, 4 or 5 times. You know, if it's a really difficult film, then I'll probably watch it a little bit more and catch on little things. But I like to see it from different angles of things. That's just me, you know. I know there's other podcasts out there that probably do the same. There's other ones that probably don't. But for me, it works that way because then I could see every different angle of where they were coming from, you know, for certain scenes. And that's just the way that I've always liked it, you know. As far as, you know, other things that kind of intrigued me about, you know, how I first started with some of the episodes, I wanted to do a little bit more of the slasher genre. And I know I had a lot of my viewers, they were telling me about, like, all you're doing is slasher films. You're doing all slasher films. And, you know, for a while, yeah, I was. And for a while, I was kind of doing different Stephen King horror films. But I'm not going to lie. Stephen King, he made a lot of good films, you know, back in his heyday. He really did. He's still doing some good ones here and there, at least in my opinion. You know, I'm not going to knock on any of his new stuff, you know, because he's still relevant. He really is. You know, he's one of the original masters of horror still. But later on, when I decided, I figured, okay, well, I want to do a fan voting episode. And so I was hyping it up for doing the fan votes. And you would not believe the tremendous amount of, you know, votes that I got on there. Everyone was commenting me, well, do this film, do that film, you know. And for the longest time, I thought, honestly, I was going to have to do Texas Chainsaw because everybody wanted me to do that one. And then when it came out that, you know, on the actual day that I was going to, you know, close it and then film everything to announce, you know, what was the #1 film, just everybody blew up. And they basically said, Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street, you have to do the first Nightmare on Elm Street. And that one won by far. And the thing that I loved about that whole experience was the fact that I got to communicate with so many with different people. You know, everybody told me, well, you know, they would give me like their top 5 first, and then eventually everybody would get to their top 3. Then they get down to like their main one, right off of everything, you know. And it was kind of surprising. It really was. I mean, there was a lot of votes, believe it or not, for a suburban film. And I'm like, man, I know I'm not the only crazy one out here, but it was kind of funny how that turned out, because everybody knows suburban film is one of those most brutal slasher gore films that's ever been made, you know, and it's a foreign film of all things. But, you know, it's just, I wanted to do that episode. Maybe in the pipeline. We'll see in year 2 what happens. You know, we'll see. But, you know, it was interesting that I did that. And the way that I announced it was really fun for me, you know, because I wanted to do, like, trailer announcements and stuff like that. And then because of YouTube's rules and regulation, you can't do so much of copyrighted material. And I understand that, you know. So that's why I wanted to try to do something that's really small that hypes it up. And then everyone's like, whoa, you know, what the hell, he's doing this? That's where the idea came from. When I started doing the trailers, you know, the announcements, episode announcements. My first one that I actually did in-house with me, you know, how I filmed it and actually, you know, planned it all out and scripted and stuff, was when I did the announcement of the Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, trying to do like, you know, 3, 4, lock the door, 5, 6, grab your crucifix, 7, 8, stay up late. And then me being a horror fan, obviously, with all this stuff, I figured, okay, I'm going to have to do something fun with it. So I did, you know, I put on my Freddy Krueger sweater, put on the hat, you know, put on the gloves, and then did everything, kind of make it like a quick 30-second intro, and just announcing like, hey, this is the one that won, tune in next week, you know, and I really had a lot of fun with that one. That was one of my favorites. A lot of my viewers really liked that too. And then later on I figured, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity now to jump into the franchise. So I tried dipping again into that, and it didn't work out as well as I thought it would as for this one. It worked out a little bit better than, you know, than the Friday the 13th series. But I know, like, when I filmed that, I was actually filming it still, obviously, in my garage. But the thing that was crazy is that it was 115 degrees, and I said, no, I'm going to wear the Freddy sweater. I got to go full out, you know. I can't let my viewers down on this, right? I'm wearing this, and I don't know if I had a heat stroke or what. But it was one of those things where I was just like, ah, damn, you know, and I lose track of things a little bit. I think I did a lot in that episode, you know, because I really was trying to make that really good. And as I do for every episode, I make sure that I always give it 110%. Always. That's just, you know, that's just me. Not to knock on anybody else or anything like that. It's just, that's my opinion. That's what I do, you know, because I have such a passion on horror films that I always 110% every time, you know. So later on, I decided, okay, well, it's the summer. I want to try and do some summer films. So that's where the idea came up with, you know, with Silver Bullet, and then I decided to do Fright Night, because Fright Night was another one of my favorites growing up as a kid. We always used to quote it when I was a kid, you know, all my family members. Oh, you're so cool, Brewster. You know, and there was times when, you know, when you're a kid and you're, you know, being a little jerk sometimes, you know, I would always get called Evil Ed. And it was kind of funny, you know, but it's just that's how my family was, you know, and we all grew up around horror films like that. That was always just our favorite thing, you know, and, you know, I wanted to continue that trend with it, but at the same time, I wanted to take the show on the road at this point, you know. That's when the idea came up for the Saw Escape Room. And, you know, most of you viewers already know that I'm a huge Saw fan, by far. I mean, the show is called SaWGuy, you know. I've already done behind-the-scenes segments on how I got the name and everything, so I won't explain that. But when I heard about the Saw Escape Room, I said, you know what, I have to do an episode there. I have to do an episode. And I planned it and everything. It was an 8-hour drive. I literally didn't sleep. I was so excited. Stayed up, drove all the way up, you know, made sure that I was comfortable and everything. Got all ready and then went over there. And it was a great time. It really was. I got to meet everybody that had their hands in and worked on this, you know, especially from the scare actors, the people that put it together, the security. They're all great people. You know, they made it not just a fun time, they made it a great experience. And as I said, you know, I recommend everyone to go there, you know. If you like horror films and everything like that, and you kind of, I know most people, they like to go to Halloween Horror Nights, and that's fun for itself too. I'm not going to knock on that. But, you know, if you want something where you're kind of like in the middle of a film, you know, as an escape room, the Saw Escape Room was the best, you know. Hopefully, I intend to come back, you know, or at least go back for year 2. So that's also planned in there. So keep on the lookout for that. And I did it on SaWGuy Day. And everyone's asking me, what the hell is SaWGuy Day? What the hell is SaWGuy Day? Well, SaWGuy Day is, instead of saying my birthday, I rather do SaWGuy Day, which was a little bit more fun on my end, you know. So that's why I was calling it, on SaWGuy Day, you know. And the funny thing is that I was born on a Friday the 13th. And this year, in 2018, my birthday fell on a Friday the 13th. So it was some good times. It really was, you know. And that's the whole reason behind all that. And because of that great experience, I want to do episodes that I do take out on the road and do something with it. So you'll see that a lot in year 2. Hopefully you'll see that in year 2. I'm trying to get some things planned up, you know, for it. So it should be a fun, interesting thing. Then later on, as I scroll down through all these, as you can tell, I still have audio-only versions of most episodes. There were some episodes I didn't do audio-only because of, you know, they didn't fit in, or, you know, you had to actually watch it to see, like the fan announcement. I didn't want to do that as audio only because, you know, that's not fair. Well, to me, it wouldn't be fair because it's like, okay, you tune into it and then you kind of hear it. Most of us horror fans would know it, you know, just from hearing the jingle and everything like that. But, you know, it was an episode that I was just like, you know what? I can't do it as audio only. It's taken away from the view. So that's why there were some episodes I did that didn't have audio only, most of them I already did, you know, but I just kept on with that trend with it, you know. And then I decided to do behind the scenes segments, you know, whether it was my masks or, you know, what I do, where I film, how do I do this and stuff like that. And I like doing those, you know, personally, because they're great, you know, couple second videos that I could post on there. You guys for enjoying between the episodes and stuff. But, you know, trying to, you know, do the editing and everything to make it all come together is just, it's a little bit too much of a work sometimes, especially with my schedule. My schedule is always just all over the place. But I still make time, you know, to put in for the SaWGuy podcast. I always do, definitely, you know. And so what I decided to do was, you know, with Halloween at this point already building up, I figured, okay, well, I'm going to throw out there some Halloween secrets. For me, I've worked in retail for a number of years, and mostly it's all tied around Halloween or horror movies and stuff like that, you know. I don't want to say where, but I've been around retail long enough to know and understand things when it comes to certain seasons, specifically for Halloween. So I did a 10-minute special episode on the secrets of Halloween, because I know a lot of people ask me, like, hey, where do you get this? You know, hey, how'd you get that? You know, like, where do you find stuff like this? You know, honestly, like, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's actually pretty cool, you know, because I give you all the in-depth on everything. You know, definitely what to look for and things like that, you know. And the biggest secret that I always try to tell everybody, start saving and start going shopping 4th of July weekend, because that's when, boom, all the Halloween stuff barely starts coming out, and that's the time to get it. Because if you miss it, like, once it starts around August and September, when Labor Day kicks off, by that time, most of the good stuff is already gone. And, you know, I just hate seeing disappointed people like that. You know, I really do. So that's why I figured, okay, well, I'm going to do a short video on this and tell you guys all the secrets and where to go and things like that. I tried to do it as as early as I can. I know with my schedule, it's just kind of a little out there. And then, as I said, later on, I did different episodes that, you know, were kind of tied into my favorites, you know. Lost Boys, you know, everybody knows Lost Boys. You know, that's a true cult classic, you know. I'm from California, and it's down the road from where I'm at, you know, where they filmed it. And so, that one of these days, I'm eventually going to try to go out there and, you know, maybe do a part 2 of this episode, maybe do something with it in year 2. We'll see, you know, because, I mean, it's crazy, because a lot of those landmarks are still up, you know, where they filmed it. Then later on, I decided to do other episodes. You know, Devil's Rejects was one of my other favorites, because I love Rob Zombie. I followed him when he was with White Zombie, you know, and I'm really big into music. I appreciate and enjoy all the music, whether it's metal, whether it's, you know, foreign music or Spanish music. And I mean, I like it all. And it's funny because a lot of people, they they kind of look at me weird, and sometimes they're like, you actually listen to that? I'm like, yeah, I get down with that. I mean, who wouldn't, right? You know, I'm pretty sure most of you guys that follow me on social media, y'all know that. Y'all know that I like a wide range of things, you know. But anyways, going down the episodes, you know, I wanted to give it, you know, a little bit more depth of who I am and what I do, and a little bit more behind the mask, I guess you could say. So I put in there like my top favorite films that I watched during Halloween, which is true, you know, because I still watch those films. Then during Halloween, I wanted to do like 4 Halloween films or Halloween-oriented films that tie into Halloween, you know. And I did the same thing recently for Christmas. But what I did, instead of doing all the episode announcements one by one, I decided to just do one big one and kind of tie it in and do something fun with it. And, you know, as I say, I'm always constantly learning to try to do different skills with editing. So, I mean, that's why some of them are just like so off the end of the spectrum, or some things I've done a one and done shot of, you know. There was other segments that I've tried, I might go back onto, was I did a segment called What's On. And it didn't work out the way that I wanted to, but I thought it was pretty cool how I did it, whereas, you know, it'd show you like everything on Netflix, everything on Hulu, you know, a little bit of things on Amazon. So maybe I might go back and revisit that kind of segment. I did the horror news update. The horror news update was great. I love doing it, but it's not often that you get enough horror news to film in a segment. And I learned that the hard way, like, well, you know, you have to wait so long so you can build it up and kind of break it down and dialogue it, you know. But eventually that's something that you might be seeing in year 2. So, hint, hint. You know. Other things that I decided to do, too, is that when I did some of the episode announcements, one of my favorite ones that I did was the American Horror Story one. Because, you know, that one came about because I have already various different masks that I like to wear and things. I figured, okay, well, you know, I'm heading on out. I turn off all my lights, and I have this one light on. I was like, whoa, this is a perfect spot. Because there's, like, it's pitch black in the background. But you can have this one light on, right? And when I filmed it, I put it on my tripod, and the rest was history. And I just basically had to use all my editing skills and then push it to the limit for me. And that was one of my favorite trailer announcements that I ever did, because, you know, to this day I still go back on it and like, man, I actually did that? You know, it's interesting, you know, it really was. But, you know, I eventually I'm still going to keep doing those, you know. It depends on the film and what it is and how I can build it up, you know. One of my other favorite ones I did was The Purge. I wanted to do something, you know, where I'm getting ready to go and do a purge, you know. The only thing is just I made that, I think I made that trailer way too long. I did about a minute. Personally for me, it was one of my favorite fun ones to do, because it you know, drive that limit to like, okay, how are you going to script this, you know? How are you going to shoot this? Are you going to shoot it with just a mask and then shoot it up to where, you know, I'm getting geared up and everything? So, I mean, it was it was fun. It was interesting. You know, eventually, for sure, I'm going to still keep doing this, because those are some of my favorites. And a lot of my viewers like it out there, and people that follow me on social media. Another different segment that I did that's kind of unique to me was I did a mask, I guess you could say a speed painting of one of my masks. And a lot of viewers, you know, they were asking me about my masks, you know. And I figured, okay, well, I'll do a speed painting, because a lot of people thinks, you know, that, oh, you didn't paint that. Oh, you just paid somebody to do that, or had do this or do that. And I'm like, well, okay, you know, I'll do a video for you. So I did that video. And, you know, personally for me, I did have fun in doing it, but the problem is that, you know, doing it just, I basically had so much footage, like, you know, I guess you could say like 4 hours. You know, I started from when I taped up the eyes and had to do everything, all the way down to when I completely finished it. And then trying to cut that down so quick, it was just like, woo, you know, that's a work in itself right there, when you have so much footage that you have to go and cut down and do everything. Fellow YouTubers, I mean, people that have a YouTube channel, y'all know what I'm talking about right there, you know, because it's always difficult when you have to try to piece everything together and try to build it, you know. So, and then I continue on the trend, like I said, with what I did with Halloween. I try to do, you know, my favorite Christmas horror films, and, you know, and here we are. We're already at the end of year 1. That's crazy, right? Some of my other favorite episodes, I know I probably didn't mention, was The Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone was one of my favorite TV shows. I still watch The Twilight Zone all the time. Whether it's on Hulu or on New Year's, they'll do it on the Sci-Fi Channel. Like, they'll run every marathon episode. And, you know, I'm just glued to the TV. Because, I mean, even as old as it is and still in black and white, it's still interesting how a lot of these stories and everything, they still kind of tie into, you know, some of the newer films that come out, you know. Take an example for me. You know, like Jordan Peele. Like, some of his movies, to me, reminds me of episodes of Twilight Zone. Some of his stuff that he's done. And I'm just like, whoa, okay, this is... I remember seeing this somewhere in a Twilight Zone episode somewhere. And it's pretty interesting, so if you don't, if you haven't checked out the Twilight Zone or the old episodes, check them out, because I mean it's a really good show for what it was. It's more than just a Disneyland ride. I know a lot of people are telling me, isn't that ride at Disneyland? No, it's not the ride. It's the actual show. Come on now. So, but, and for me, those are some of my favorite moments that I've done on this show. I have various other moments, but I know, obviously, due to time, I'm not going to go into all in depth on those, when I started this show, I announced it in July of 2017, and I took a clear 6 months of time to build up everything. And as I said, yes, I was a part of a previous project that, I learned a lot. I'm not going to lie on that. For whatever reason, there was just basically a fallout. And for me, I was just like, okay, well, it is what it is. I'm not going to do the podcast game anymore. I'll still enjoy my horror films. But then later on, I just got the itch to do it, I just got the itch to do it on my own because of the fact of, I love horror films so much, and they're a part of my life daily, that I wanted to do something to kind of, bring it to everyone's attention, because there's a lot of good films out there that a lot of people will never even see just because of how the cover looks or the premise or various different things, I mean, I could tell you various horror films that you can go to Redbox and see, like the covers, they don't look too good, but when you see the movie, you're like, oh shit, this is pretty good. There's a lot of those. Like $5 bins. When you go to Walmart or Target, you see like the $5 movie bins. And, a lot of people, they don't really know that some of those movies are really, really good. Why are they $5? I will never know, but hey, it benefits me and everybody else that likes those films, right? But that, I mean, when I started this, in all actuality, I really did have the itch to come back and actually do it, because I tried to stay retired, but it was more or less like, I had fun with this, back in the previous project, and I still have fun with this, even by myself, watching a film and seeing it from different angles and different views, because there's a lot of things that I completely missed, like, for an example, American Psycho. I've seen that movie so many times, I just didn't understand some of the main points. And then I went back and actually read the book, and then I watched the movie, and I was like, holy shit, this is two different forms of media here, And then I actually had to see the movie, I know it's a long movie, it's like close to 2.5 hours, but I had to see it from this angle or this angle, because that was one of those films that was very difficult for me to do an episode, because it's just like, okay, there's so much going on, how am I going to break it all down, because there's various cameos, there was various different things going on. I mean, that's just one example right there with it, But, it's fun. It really is. I wouldn't trade any of the experience that I have done, throughout the whole year with the SaWGuy podcast. I would not trade it at all. And as busy as I normally try to stay, with a lot of outside factors and everything, I still find the time to do the SaWGuy podcast and do this full time. I really do love doing this full time. I don't see it as a job per se. For me, I see it as a hobby because I love doing this. I really do, I love to bring out, different films that people forgot about. I love to talk about, films that people have never even heard about, which is the reason why I did some random episodes like, the foreign horror films. The foreign horror, I love a lot of foreign horror films from back in the day because, they don't make them like that no more. I mean, you'll see some, good ones here and there, recent ones, Train to Busan. That's one of the recent ones that I liked. I Saw the Devil. That was another good recent one that I really enjoyed, So who knows? Maybe you might see those in year 2. Maybe you may not. We'll see, because year 2, I have a lot of ideas and projects put into, how I'm going to plan out everything out, For sure you'll see some different segments back. I'm not going to lie about that. Because I know I want to try and tie in a little bit more of my hobbies. Behind the mask, who I am, I do have a lot of hobbies that I enjoy, One of them is video games. I've been asked a few times how come I don't, cover video games or stream video games. And with streaming video games, it's a huge other world of its own, And some of the video games I like, I like some of the retro ones. I'm not really into... I love the horror survival games, don't get me wrong. I love, the original ones. But some of these newer ones, they just, I don't know, they get too in-depth for me, and I'm just like, okay, well, those are cool, but I'd rather stick to the originals, you know what I'm saying? So I might possibly do some video game stuff in here. You know, we'll see. Because I know I've been asked that a lot. Another thing I've been asked about, because I got a couple viewers that follow me, you know, not just on YouTube, but they also, you know, follow me on Facebook and my Twitter. And they see that I'll throw out different things, you know, for wrestling, you know. I'm a huge wrestling fan. The first episode that I did, everybody was like, dude, you put on, you know, the theme, the King of Kings theme. I was like, yeah, that's one of my freaking favorite themes of all time, you know. I still watch wrestling. I still try to catch the shows whenever I can, you know, because I've always enjoyed that as a kid. You know, there's other different hobbies that I like, and I know everyone's going to say, well, oh, you're just all about horror and this and this and that. And it's like, well, most of the time, yes, but there is other times that I really do follow into other things. You know, wrestling's one of them. You know, I have a lot of other outside hobbies that I like to do. You know, one of my favorite things that I like to do, I like to do some things outdoors. You know, I like to go out there and just, I don't know, breathe in the fresh air. And, you know, I like to go to the shooting range, you know. Believe it or not, like, for me, I've been raised around a lot of outdoor stuff. My dad's always been huge on outdoors. Whether it's fishing, we go out shooting at the range, or, you know, do something fun, you know, because I do that on my spare time, you know, if I have any spare time. But, I mean, I've always enjoyed it. That's always one of my other hobbies. And originally, I was planning to do maybe a separate channel just on the hobbies alone, but then I thought, okay, I'm already putting too much on my plate with that, you know? But I do have a lot of other hobbies, you know, so behind the mask, I'm not all just about horror. There's many other things that I like, you know. I'm really big into, you know, I guess you could say pop culture, just because, you know, I like a lot of various different things. But, you know, out of everything that I like, you know, horror will always be number one for me. And it will always be number one for me because I was raised around it. I grew up with it, you know, and I still enjoy it, you know. Here it is, you know, 30 plus years later, I'm still enjoying it, you know. So, but thank you all for tuning in on this special year in review. I hope you all enjoy the first year of the SaWGuy podcast, because year 2 is right around the corner, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make it another memorable year. So keep tuning in, guys. Thank you all for tuning in, and as always, I'll catch you next time.
Bow down to the